Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie, and I am with The Novel Neighbor. And we are so excited that you are joining us this evening. If you're not familiar with The Novel Neighbor, we are a locally owned and operated independent bookstore in St. Louis, Missouri. So thank you so much for being here. We have an amazing event planned for us this evening with the wonderful Benjamin Hochman. Sorry, now I'm messing it up. Who is a local author, a hometown hero in his own right. And we're here to discuss his book, 11 in 11, a hometown hero, Larussa's last ride in red in a Miracle World Series for the St. Louis Cardinals. Before we get to talking about his book, I want to make sure that you know a little bit about how his amazing background, because it's way more extensive than even being a sports columnist, even though for St. Louis, which he claims is his absolute dream job. But Benjamin, he's a sports columnist, as I said, for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He is a St. Louis native and graduate of the Missouri School of Journalism, so shout out to that. He has covered major events such as the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, and the 2008 Beijing Olympics. He's also won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for his coverage of Hurricane Katrina. And like I said, tonight we're here to talk about his newest book that he has authored, which I just want to spotlight. We have some signed copies that he was kind enough to come into the store and sign and personalize today. So without any further ado, let's bring him on. Hello, good evening. How are you?
Hello. I'm awesome. And might I say, the staff won the Pulitzer Prize. I was just a small cog in the machine. Yeah.
It still feels like it counts.
I'll take it.
Deserve recognition for that.
Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Thank you so much for being here. Happy book birthday. I mean, not only are we here to talk about the book, but like its birthday is today, correct? Just hit our shelves, fresh off the printers. How does it feel? I mean, you've written before, but does this feel any different than other books?
It does. This one's particularly special for like 73 reasons. But I mean, I guess right away, I wrote it essentially for my daughter. Our daughter was born this past summer during the pandemic, and I started writing the book shortly after and dedicated to her and my wife, Angela, and just, wanted something that could be on the shelves for a long time that she could point to and said, Daddy did that. Yes, there's a lot of grammatical errors in there, but still he worked hard on it.
I love that. I'm sure she will be so, so proud. And congratulations on having your first child. How long did it take you to write this book from start? I mean, because there's also, just how long did it take you to write this book?
That's a good question. The cheesy answer would be that I started writing it in my head during the 2011 World Series. But in all honesty, like when I was in the stadium for those games in 2011, when the Cardinals won Game 6 and Game 7, and like right away, I'm like, this is a book. Someone's got to write this book. And just a quick decade later, I was fortunate and able to write the book. But basically, I wrote it last summer during the pandemic and during my first few months of fatherhood. So luckily, I didn't have much going on. Just not sleeping for 24 hours straight every day. No, it was a cool challenge, and honestly, I'm really proud of it. So thanks for taking some time to chat with me about it tonight.
You should absolutely be proud of this. And that answered my question, because I was wondering if you knew in the moment of watching Game 6, if you knew that you were going to write this book eventually. And it sounds like you always knew it needed to be something, it needs to be perfect. And like a 10-year anniversary of this win kind of seems like the perfect time for it to come out. So
yeah.
Thank you for struggling those 3 months when you had absolutely nothing else going on to bless us with it. Okay, so for everyone watching, I think pretty quickly into the book, we note how big of a deal Game 6 was. And any true Cardinals fan will know how momentous of a game it was. So for people watching, feel free. We'd love to hear in the chat where you were, how you were watching, any specific memories you have tied to Game 6. And while we're waiting for some of those to come in, can you tell us like what your distinct memory is watching that game?
Sure. So I was in the absolute last row of the bleachers with my buddy Drew Green for Game 6 and my buddy Michael Slonim for Game 7. And there's so many emotions when you're there. I mean, like, I don't know if I could go through that game again. It was so roller coastery. I mean, I don't know. It really was like fatiguing and then exhilarating. And I just being at that stadium, I'll never forget it, and I'll never forget that feeling of almost floating once he hit the home run. And I'm sure the 47,000 other people in the stadium, and frankly the 1,047,000 people watching in Cardinal Nation felt a similar feeling.
Totally. We actually were talking about this in the bookstore, and shout out to Linda. She was the one who was like, I can still remember like the tingles. Like I was in my living room screaming. She's in the chat telling us that right now. Thanks for sharing that, Linda. And also she told me another story. I think this is amazing. A friend of hers was flying to California for their kid's wedding, and was watching Game 6 like in the airport, like landed and watched it instead of leaving the airport, and then ended up watching it with these other like St. Louisans who were on the flight, or I shouldn't say St. Louisans, other people who were on the flight who were very invested in the game, and like ended up inviting them to their kid's wedding because they felt like they had like, gone through something together, that they were like,
amazing.
That's his journey together. You have to come to our kid's wedding.
Yeah. So that's what it's all about. I mean, that's I wish I had known that story, last summer. I would have put it in the book. And the reality is that I like during the past decade, and I'm sure you've experienced it too, and everybody watching has experienced it. You talk to someone and you bring up Game 6 just because it's a shared experience. Hey, where were you when that game happened? Whether it was on your couch by yourself, losing fingernails by the minute, or, in a crazy scenario, everyone's got a story and it's a shared experience. And I interviewed many fans for the book. I have 11 Game 6 stories in there, if you will. Like, obviously, the couch stories are amazing, but I wanted some unique Game 6 stories to put in there forever. So I put that in the book.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wanted to highlight that, because I think it's something that your book is so informative, and there's so many different ways that you break down, like, how did this team make this happen, and the different perspectives and angles that we can look at that season and how it led to this World Series. But it really feels like such a St. Louis move. And what really makes the book feel like personal is that at the end of every chapter, you have a personalized story that you've collected. And I was just wondering what the process was for collecting those, how you came up with the idea that that's what you want, that you wanted to include them in the book. So what was, that's my question.
That's a great question. And it really did kind of just all fall into place, because I was like, I wanted to write a book that hadn't been written before. And my colleague at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Rick Hummel, he had written a book with Tony Larussa right after the World Series was over. And it's a great book. So I was like, I can't just write the same style of book they did. So I needed something clever, creative, curveball, if you will. And I was like, I feel like there's so many fan stories that hadn't been told. So I just started gathering them, and whether it was via Twitter or just like hearsay, like, hey, my buddy told me once about this girl he knew this guy that was in a submarine during Game 6, that type of thing. And I was able to gather 11 stories, and it just fit. I was like, let's do 11 of them. We'll have 11 chapters in the book, 11 and 11, since it was the Cardinals' 11th World Series in the year 2011.
I love how much you tied that all together. It feels very perfect. And I just want to share that John, who's tuning in, said that for Game 6, they were in the hospital waiting for surgery the next day. And so they were really excited because Game 7, they were in surgery. and woke up to hear that they had won Game 7 and won the series. So
these stories, right? They're amazing. Every one of them. I mean, I could write a second book with stories just like John's and Linda's and everybody else.
Yeah, they really. It's like, even reading the book, I found that like there were different times where like I had chills of just like your description of like what was happening on the field and like different plays that were being made. But then like even for the stories that were shared, although some of my reactions, I felt there's somebody in here, not to spoil it too much, but somebody leaves Game 6, right, and might have gotten to get the ball. Just like my heart broke for him. Oh, that's a regret for sure. Okay, so somebody that you cover, I mean, it's kind of in the subtitle, a hometown hero, is David Freese. And so I guess, can we just recap I think a lot of us know part of David's story, but his journey leading up to the World Series was also a pretty big deal in its own right, wouldn't you say?
No question about it. And when you look at David Freese, we have a situation where he did something that was superhuman. I mean, he was a superhuman, hit the triple with 2 strikes in the World Series and then hit a homer later in the same game. But he's so very human. He's so very human. And he battles demons with alcoholism. And also, after the World Series, battled a lot of demons of just being so famous in his hometown. I mean, the reality, I've said this on a radio show earlier in the week. I was like, if David Freese was from Botswana, he would still be our guy because he hit the triple and hit the home run. But he's from Wildwood. He's from up the street. He went to the batting cages called the infield in Ellisville. Like, we probably, played sports. Everyone has a story. Oh, I played sports against him. My somebody else was like, oh, his mom was my teacher. I mean, he's just part of the community, but he's the one that won the lottery, if you will, and he won the lottery just by getting to be on the Cardinals, right? I mean, how many kids grow up wanting to be a ball player in St. Louis, and some of them actually even do make the majors, but they're on the Cubs, the Tigers, the Orioles, the White Sox, whatever. David Freese was on the Cardinals, so that's cool enough. And then to, of course, do what he did in Game 6. I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. And, I got him he's up there, all the way up past Larry David. He's in the corner there. And then we've got the David Freese newspaper right there as well. Freeze It was the headline after Game 6.
Oh, my gosh. I think I forgot that. That's a good play on words. I respect that headline.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, to that point, and you kind of already said this, but like he would have already been a big deal because of what he did. But do you think he would become as iconic for this game had he not been from St. Louis? Or do you think the fact that it was our guy who did it like has really solidified this moment even more so?
Well, I like how you put it there, because he's from St. Louis, it just took this already A+ sports moment and took it to wait, A+ is the highest grade, isn't it? I should have started with A+. I should have said like his A moment and made it A+. Yeah, I mean, it was the perfect confluence of storylines. When he slid into third base, he looked up in the stands to see his parents. It's just like, it's unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, he is this amazing ball player, but he battled a lot of things too. And you probably read in there, I interviewed the police officer who arrested him for a DUI. And you think about how life's journey and how that could have led him down a different path, but he persevered through that. And that's the cool thing about David Freese, one of the many, is that he's very honest and open about what he's battled. And because of that, one of his best friends, Matt Landwehr, said in the book, like, I think that's part of his legacy too, that he inspires people for not being afraid of a stigma battling alcoholism or anything like that. And if you have a problem, seek help and don't be afraid and talk to someone you love, because people love you back.
Well, and I think that speaks to like what I would say, full disclosure to everyone watching, I am not from St. Louis, but what I have come to really associate with St. Louis is like this authenticity. At least St. Louis admits it has a chip on its shoulder. Some towns just deny it and it's a bad look, but St. Louis is at least honest that it is realistically just St. Louis. But it's authentically St. Louis. It's got quirks and cracks and flaws, but there are quirks and cracks and flaws. And I just love that. I feel like that describes St. Louis so well. And to the point of David, like how I think he reflects how he is like our hometown hero is like, that's what I felt like the description I was getting when I was reading his chapter and kind of breaking down his story leading up to this.
Yeah.
So
thanks for sharing that passage. That made me smile.
Yeah. Yes, way more where that came from. If people love connected with that. So you are from St. Louis and you know St. Louis, but you've worked outside of St. Louis. You've worked in Colorado, you've worked in New Orleans. So can you tell us a little bit of like an outsider perspective of like what are St. Louis sports fans to everyone else? I mean, I think we all already kind of know that like we're the town to beat as a fan base, but like what is that perspective that you've gotten from living in other places about us?
Well, one of the neatest experiences for me was living in New Orleans, where football and the New Orleans Saints have a very similar relationship to the citizens there as baseball does here. And like, I'm clearly every city has super fans. Like every city has big fans of the team. Even Colorado, where I live, the Rockies, they have a lot of losing seasons, but there are some diehard fans there who can tell you the WOBA and the whip of different players, these different stats out of nowhere. And, they're all in on their team. But there's something about a town like St. Louis, a town like New Orleans, where the team is part of the community. And I'm not talking about like the shortstop hanging out at the bar, part of the community. I'm just talking about like, it's almost like an heirloom passed down to generations, this love and respect for the sport and the team and the heritage and the history. And then it's a shared experience with everyone. And so like you said, like, when you're in St. Louis, you can sense it's pretty special. But when I went to New Orleans and kind of saw the similarities with the Saints, and then also watched that city after Hurricane Katrina and watched the people who looked to sports for, I guess the word would be therapy, for an escape. And the Saints had a tremendous season in 2006. It was just this like beautiful, beautiful combination of a team and a city. And it just reminded me of back home. And sure enough, again, of course, like St. Louis didn't have a natural disaster or anything in 2011, though I did write about Joplin and the tornado that we might get to later on. But St. Louis just kind of like persevered along with the team. And it was, I keep using the word, but 2011 was an experience, and it was a shared experience.
Well, and I'm so glad that you brought up New Orleans, because I did want to talk about that. So as you said, there's, a chapter of the book where you cover Joplin and the tornado that came through, and the Cardinals players went to Joplin and came back and kind of said, like, you can't even know what it's like watching it looks horrible and we know it's not good, but being there is like a totally different level. And I was wondering what your perspective was as somebody who spent time in New Orleans, and as you mentioned, they had a tremendous year. They won the division, right? They didn't win the Super Bowl that year, but within 3 years, I think in 2009, right, they won it. And it like was kind of still like, I remember watching that Super Bowl and it being like, this is a big deal for the city of New Orleans. Like, this is our like kind of comeback from Katrina, everything else. So what do you think the role is of sports and kind of morale, and specifically around like these, because Joplin is not super close to St. Louis, but they are a huge Cardinal city in a state that technically can argue has two teams. So yeah, what is that role of sports and morale in kind of helping a city move forward?
It's pretty important. And someone might say, oh, it's just sports, or, oh, it's just a game. And it's not even someone you know playing the game. It's a stranger, professional athlete who's not even a friend or family member of yours. Why do you care so much? But clearly, we've seen during the course, at least of even in my lifetime, moments where sports transcends. And you mentioned, of course, New Orleans, and then you think back even to 2001 in New York City, and at the time, Mayor Giuliani, and all the love and passion from the citizens of New York put into the city after such a tragedy occurred, and we saw it in the World Series there in 2001. And Joplin, Missouri, again, yeah, it's a couple hours away, but heck, I had coffee this morning at Caldy's with Eric Willis. He's from Joplin, and he loves the Cardinals. And there's a lot of Cardinals fans there, and so when that town was hit by the tornado during the baseball season in 2011, there were people seeking therapy through baseball. And I interviewed two women. Now they're both seniors in high school at the time, who were on the softball team for Joplin's high school. And I mean, their stories, it brought back memories of writing my book about Hurricane Katrina, because their stories were just so gobsmackingly unfathomable. They were literally in the house as part of the house flew away. I can't fathom that, right? But they persevered, and through their families and through their faith and through a lot of other things in life, that helped them through. But man, the escape of baseball and them telling the story about just going to Busch Stadium and getting to throw out the first pitch and what that did to them from a happiness standpoint. I mean, there's something to be said about morale, like you brought up.
Oh, yeah, it is. And someone was wondering if with the Boston Marathon bombing, if the Red Sox did well that year also,
Yeah. I believe, if we're doing the math right, it was 2013 when they beat the Cardinals in the World Series. And yeah, I mean, their star player, David Ortiz. I mean, I won't curse here on the novel neighbor virtual event, but he had a microphone, and after the bombing, he said, "This is our bleeping city." He said it before a game, and I mean, I'm not saying you need to curse to make a point, but like, imagine being there and you hear your favorite player like say that. It's so raw, it's so authentic, and it's so real. He's like, "This is our city. We're gonna get through this. A person did a terrible thing, and it was a tragedy, but together we will get through this." And the baseball team fed off that. They, of course, did really well. Then again, Boston wins every year in anything anyway, so it's not. I
know, sore subject, but
yeah. Like, oh my gosh, Boston won a championship. Amazing. They win every year and everything. Except in 2019, they lost the Stanley Cup Finals to your St. Louis Blues.
Bye, Boston. Yeah. I know. Shout out to my Boston friends.
That was the Stanley Cup, and then this is also the Stanley Cup.
We have such a probably huge crossover of Cardinals and Office fans that like that'll be perfect for. We'll eat that up. So that's great. You have like a whole treasure trove there behind you. Is this just like anything that brings you joy makes it into this room, or how do you curate this collection?
All I need is I have my wife, my daughter, and a cheeseburger, and I've got all the joy, right? Over the year, I like to collect things that I think are cool. They may not be worth anything, but I think they're cool. And then in November, we started this daily show on stltoday.com, which is the Post-Dispatch's website. And it's a 10 a.m. show. And my name is Ben Hochman, so we call it 10 Hochman. And it airs every day at 10. And you're watching the set of 10 Hochman right now. So my point is, like, I had all this crap, and now I can like put it to good use and make it a set for that show. And of course, speaking here to the novel neighbor.
Well, so speaking of people that we might not love, like some of our Boston teams, someone I think is trolling us a little bit, but would like to know what your thoughts are on umpire Don Denkinger.
Sure. What are my thoughts on Don Denkinger? Luckily, so I was born in 1980. If I had been born in like my point is this, I was only 5 years old in 1985. So I didn't have to experience that World Series, firsthand. But I feel bad for everybody else who did. Obviously the worst call in sports history. Maybe not sports history. It's a bad call. The guy made a bad call at a bad time. Look, we talk a lot about mental strength though in sports, and the Cardinals just fell apart. They still had another game to play, and they didn't win Game 7 either in 1985. But Don Denkinger. You hear that name, and you hear David Freese. He makes your skin chilled. You hear Don Denkinger, and it makes your skin crawl.
John probably knows St. Louis is not his place to vacation. Probably.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
Kansas, maybe 4 hours west.
Yeah, he can stick to Kansas City. Okay, we also have some requests in the chat to tell us more about Yadi.
Yes.
Nothing specific, but so take that any direction that you would like to, but let's give Yadi some love.
Yeah, Yadier Molina, he's a special human. He calls himself the Martian, and what a great nickname, because it's as if he's from another planet. How could he possibly be human playing baseball at a high level for all these years? And this year, he's one of the best hitters on the St. Louis Cardinals. He really is a special dude. And he was a huge part of the 2011 run. My favorite little Yadier anecdote, though, is when I moved back to St. Louis. I would follow the team as a St. Louisan from Denver. But then in 2015, I was hired to be the sports columnist for the Post-Dispatch. So I come home and so what I'm getting at is clearly I'm here to write columns, hard-hitting columns. And if there's something that needs to be said about the team, doggone it, I'm going to say it, And so my first week or two, Yadier, this was in 2015. The team was awesome. Yadier was doing well, but he had a thumb injury, and he wasn't resting the thumb. Now, they were going to make the playoffs. They did make the playoffs. But he was hitting so poorly in that week or so because he couldn't hold a bat. His thumb was hurt, and he was playing hurt, and it was valiant and admirable. But I was like, gosh, if you're going to be – I wrote this. I was a young punk at the time. If you're gonna be hitting a batting average as low as what Tony Cruz would hit anyway, the backup catcher, you might as well just let the backup catcher Tony Cruz play, and you can rest your thumb for the more important games in October. I thought it was a good line. And then the next day I go into the Cardinals clubhouse, and he's like, new guy, come here. And he's a proud person, and he's yelling at me, and I'm trying to explain where I was coming from. And it didn't matter what was coming out of my mouth. It was already written. But all I could think of as he's yelling at me is man, if my buddies could see this, and, Yadi is yelling at me. And so I handled it, and I apologized to him and Tony Cruz, and I learned a lesson journalistically, and Yadi and I have had our ups and downs over the years because he's so passionate and so takes everything to the heart. He's one of my favorite athletes to write about, and there's a lot of him in the book. I believe the chapter is about him and Albert Pujols together, which was kind of a fun merging of these two great friends and great teammates.
Yeah, and there's some good pics of them in here.
Yeah.
I think, right? And did they? Yeah. So anyway, I'm not going to
put great photos
in the book to see the cool pics, but there's some cool pics in here for anyone curious. Peter McCall, shout out to Peter. My favorite memories of 2011, aside from the obvious, are hashtag Happy Flight and Torty Craig.
Love it. And that's the thing about the 2011 Cardinals is there's so many subplots, And we were all part of this journey as they came back. Everyone knows, or if you don't know, they were literally 10 and a half games out of the playoffs on August 25th. That's really far back. And so their comeback combined with this is the Cardinals coming back, and this is the Atlanta Braves falling into the ground, led to the Cardinals making the playoffs. But like he said, there's so many fun storylines. Happy flight. Basically Rafael Furcal, who the Cardinals acquired that year, and he was such a joyous player. And when they would win a game, win a series, and be flying to another town, he'd scream "Happy Flight," and they'd jump up and down, and it was the most childish and silly thing ever, and it was awesome. And it just became a thing. And that's the thing. Like, we're dealing with literally. I keep saying literally, but I think I'm using it accurately.
I think you are.
Literally millionaires. Literally millionaires, and literally like the best athletes on the planet. Yet when they do something like Happy Flight, or they get excited about Alan Craig's pet tortoise named Torty, I mean, it's just very humanizing as well, and it's fun for them. And there were so many other storylines that, of course, I wrote about in the book, notably Nick Punto, the Shredder, who would on occasion rip the jersey off a teammate after an accomplishment in kind of a celebratory way. And so, yeah, I mean, how ridiculous, right? I mean, but that's baseball. That's what it's all about. I think back to like a movie like Bull Durham, where I know that's minor leagues, but the guys are just having a bunch of fun being on the team. And that's what Skip Schumacher said in this book. He's like, even if we didn't win the World Series, that would have been the most fun team I was ever on. And you know what? When you're having fun, a lot of optimism occurs and success occurs too. And sure enough, they won it all.
Exactly. Well, and one of the memories it brought back for me, you and I kind of talked about this before we went on air, but I am not a St. Louisan. So I do remember the Cardinals being in the World Series as a baseball fan, but was not physically here. But I remember, I mean, of course I remember, but like Rally Squirrel, just like really, like I haven't thought about Rally Squirrel in a minute. And you get to that in the book. And I was just like, I remember that being like national news. Like you didn't have to be a baseball fan to know about this squirrel. Like it totally transcended sport.
I mean, the fact that we already named 3 other ridiculous things from the team, and none of them were the squirrel involved. Like there's a 4th, like that's how many crazy, silly, fun things were a part of this team. And yeah, the squirrel ran on the field right in front of Skip Schumacher when he was at bat. I guess he was a lefty, so when he was at bat. And yeah, I mean, it became a thing. And the Cardinals literally, but again, I'm using literally accurately, they literally created a second mascot dressed as a human-sized squirrel. And as I'm saying those words, that sounds quite frightening and creepy, but it worked. They pulled it off. And if you look at footage from 2011, Game 7, who's on the field cheering? Fredbird and the Rally Squirrel.
Oh, Mara is telling us that she was at the Rally Squirrel game, but also later the Rally Cat game. So
yes, and that ties in Yadier Molina. That was a couple seasons later, but yeah, Yadier is up at bat, and all of a sudden, before the pitch comes, he's pointing with his bat, and people are like, "Is he trying to pull a Babe Ruth? Because he only has like 3 home runs this year. That's kind of cocky of him to be pulling a bit. Oh wait, he's pointing at something. What is he pointing at?" And Yadier from the batter's box spotted a cat running across the field. And then he had a big at-bat there, and that was a fun thing as well. So, gosh, they could have a whole zoo just of Cardinals animals.
I know. We do well. We need more animals on the field. We seem to have a great performance if we have animals to kind of entertain us.
Yeah.
People would like to know, do you have any Rally Squirrel gear behind you?
So I have so much Cardinals stuff that I've collected over the years. There's boxes in the basement that there is. My point is, no, I don't believe there might be a squirrel running around this room, but I don't think there's an actual Rally Squirrel thing, like everything else. But yeah, Yeah, I mean that was the fun of it. I mean, people had T-shirts and on the back cover of the book. Where's the book? Give me a book here. On the back cover of the book, we got a Dotel holding up the rally squirrel right there. So,
oh yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was part of Cardinals lore and will be forever.
For cemented in history. Shout out to the squirrel. Okay. So, how do you feel about 2006 to 2011? And like, is this why like 11 outdoes everything? Or do you think they are comparable? How do you feel about them?
Great question. The 2006 World Series was special, obviously, like if only because they won the championship, but it was special because for people of my generation, I mean, I was born 1980, like I said, so I was 2 in 82, and as we know, I don't have any memories even of 85. So my point is, people my age had never experienced a world championship. And while it was kind of weird, of course, that the 06 team wasn't, if you will, as good as the 04 and 05 team, it was still a magical run, a fun run, and they brought home the trophy. But if you look at the 2011 Cardinals and the story of that team, it's arguably, and I know I've got I know I'm a St. Louis guy and I'm biased, but I know I got Cardinal stuff everywhere. But you could really argue it's one of the great baseball stories ever. The 2011 Cardinals, the comeback, and then being down to their last strike twice in Game 6. Like we talked about, the fact that David Freese is from St. Louis. So really, my point is this: that like that experience of 2011 is almost like in a vacuum, in a silo of itself. And even though St. Louis got to experience 06 and it was amazing, I don't think anything will top 2011. That's the thing is, I mean, I don't know what story. Give me a storyline that could be better than the David Freese storyline. I don't think we'll ever have it in St. Louis again.
Well, so this ties great into this. Supposedly, ESPN has named 2011's World Series as the 5th greatest of all time. How do we feel about the 5th greatest? I don't have in front of me all 4 that they listed above them, although I'm sure I could find them quickly.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that status?
Well, I mean, I would love to have I would have a Budweiser. I don't know what the writer of the story would drink, but we would have a beer and talk this out. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's fun. I mean, clearly the 1991 World Series, which kind of is a bridge. There is a bridge to this World Series when in Game 6 of that World Series, they have a walk-off homer by Kirby Puckett, and broadcaster Jack Buck, who was the bobblehead last night at the Cardinal game. Jack Buck says, "We will see you tomorrow night." And then, 20 years later, Joe Buck, his son, is broadcasting the St. Louis game. Freese hits the homer, says, "We will see you tomorrow night." Anyway, the 1991 World Series was pretty amazing. The aforementioned 2001 World Series, because of 9/11, was so powerful. Also, so I mean, we could do this all day, but I would vouch for this World Series to the point that I would even write a book about it if I could.
Yes. Okay. So I managed to pull up the list, and I think you mentioned this. So number 4, they put 1986 Mets over the Red Sox. 3rd was Senators over the Giants in 1924.
Who can forget that one?
Who can forget 1924? 1991 Twins over the Braves was number 2, and they ranked Reds over Red Sox from 1975 as the number 1.
I mean, that's a pretty good one, too. I mean, that also involved a Game 6 walk-off home run. That was Carlton Fisk. And of course, for this book, I rewatched the broadcast of the Game 6, and they're showing Game 6 walk-offs, which included, of course, Carlton Fisk in 75. And he's waving it fair. He wants the home run to stay fair, and it does. But they end up losing Game 7. That's the thing. And it's in my book, and Rick Hummel wrote it too in his great book. If the Cardinals still needed to win Game 7, and Tony La Russa, the manager, had a great mindset. He told the team, about the 1980 Olympics. He reminded them about when the hockey team beat Russia, one of the greatest moments in sports history. But if they hadn't beat Finland in the next game to win the gold medal, maybe, of course, we'd still remember it, but it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. And that's what he said. He goes, we still have to beat Finland. We still have to win Game 7. And doggone it, the Cardinals did.
Ugh, I'm getting chills all over again. Every time we keep going through that, I'm getting oh, this is great. I think this is Angela is coming to say that you have a painting of the Rally Cat from Stephen Walden. I
do, yes. It is, and I don't think it's right near me, but yeah, Stephen Walden, the phenomenal artist locally, who does all great things Cardinals. He made out a print of the Rally Cat in the other room.
I love that. And obviously we're going to keep going, tons of questions, but I want to break and pause and make sure that people know, like, please feel free to throw your questions in the chat, ask anything. We want you to be involved in this. So if there's a burning question you have for Benjamin, please put it in there. Sure. But as we wait for those to come in, you just mentioned Tony Larussa. And so, I mean, you focus on him a lot in the book. A key part of this win, playing around with different formulas, doing all kinds of wild things on the field. I mean, just like, let's talk about him as a manager for a second.
Yeah. I mean, he's a mastermind. He's one of the more fascinating guys in baseball history. He got his first managerial job in 1979 at a young age. And that was with the White Sox. And we all know the story about how or maybe you don't know. If you don't know, Tony Larussa, he retired after the 2011 season. And that's a big part of the book is this. I mean, he is the legendary manager of the Cardinals, took over in 1996 for that season and really resuscitated the Cardinals in many ways. And he won the second title in 11. And the day after told everyone he was retiring, which kind of blew their minds. Only a few people knew, family members, executive John Mozeliak, who I interviewed for the book, and he shared some really pretty inside baseball, behind the curtain stories about how he dealt with Larussa pending retirement. But so we're writing this book, and the name of the book is Larussa's Last Ride in Red, and Larussa's Last Ride in Red, because it was. But the day this was due was the day he announces that he's going to the White Sox, and I get a call from Triumph Books. We're like, what are we going to do? It's on the cover. How do we? I mean, it hadn't been printed yet, but it was like about to be printed. Right. And so we came up with adding those two words in red because it was his last ride in red.
Yes.
But I guess if he decides to go manage the Reds or the Red Sox or something in the future, we're screwed.
Maybe he'll stick with the White Sox. Maybe it'll be the end. I mean, but so speaking of that, how do you feel? And this question's coming in the chat too. How do you predict that the Cards will fare versus the Sox and Larussa?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go with that question. I mean, and that's the fun thing is the White Sox are a legit team. They already had a no-hitter this year, and they have a lot of fantastic young players. One of them's injured for the year, which is unfortunate. But I mean, this would be crazy to even suggest. But I mean, what if they met in the World Series? I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. The White Sox will probably make the playoffs, and the Cardinals probably will too. I mean, that would be extraordinary if Larussa was managing against the Cardinals in the World Series. And just in general with Larussa going to the White Sox at first hearing about it, I was like, oh man, it's not even to have to do with my book. Just like, it's kind of ruining the story. It's Michael Jordan with the Washington Wizards. Well, what is this? But then I was like, you know what? We have one life to live. And, you know, we go through journeys in life. And if at this moment in time, this age, Tony feels like he'll be nourished by being a major league manager yet again, even though he's already in the Hall of Fame, then go for it, man. Who are we to say? And he's there, and so far so good.
I mean, I think if we've learned anything from this past year, it's like we got to do what brings us joy and makes us happy. That's for sure, especially when so many things get taken away from us unexpectedly and for such a long period of time. which I think we can all like agree that we are pumped to have sports back in our life. I know there were like several times at the beginning where we were like, what do we watch? Like, we're a big sports family. My household is, and it was like, oh, we like are running out of content. Like we've got through a lot of content. We don't have a lot coming in right now. But yes, I think people are loving in the chat the idea of floating a Sox versus Cards World Series, which could be very fun. Yeah, I asked, I told you this again before the beginning, but I asked my husband, because he is a White Sox fan who feels like love the Cardinals and the White Sox both, as living in St. Louis. I was like, what do you think about his managing? And he was like, I mean, we're winning. So
right.
He's like, I'll take it. Okay, and we do have a question coming in of what records does Albert still hold in the World Series stats specifically?
I presume that's in reference to total bases in one game. Total bases in that famous I guess it was game 3 when he hit all those home runs. 3 home runs.
Yeah, so he still holds that. No one took that away from him.
I believe he still holds that. That would be I don't know the number on my head, but that'd be a tough one to break.
And Jeff would also like to know if your book tour is coming to any other NL Central cities.
I'd love to get to, I don't know, like a Cincinnati. Some of my favorite barbecue in the country is at Eli's there. And the chili's not bad. I don't know. I mean, in all honesty, we have yet to set up a lot of in-person events because we just don't know what the rules will be. But I'm sensing that by July and August, we'll be able to do some things in person. And my wife Angela and I have already talked about maybe going to Springfield, Missouri, or Memphis, Tennessee, where the minor league teams are for the Cardinals, and doing some events there. But man, that would be fun to get to Cincinnati for a Red Series. And also, I mean, the good thing about the National League Central is there's a lot of beautiful ballparks. You throw in Pittsburgh, and I like Cincinnati's Great American Ballpark, though some people call it Great American Small Park because it's so small that even I could hit a home run there. And of course Wrigley, and then Milwaukee. So hopefully we'll be on the road by season's end.
Well, and Jeff is making me think of a great point. We said this a little bit about at the beginning, but we do have signed copies, and to be very clear, we will ship them. So if you can't wait for you to physically be there, we are more than happy to ship signed copies. We have those in stock. So another question coming through is, do you have any sports superstitions that you hold tight to?
Do I personally have superstitions? Wow, that's a great question. Clearly they didn't help since I hit under the Mendoza line as a high school baseball player. Superstitions. No, I mean, my I guess one thing I do, it's not superstition, but it's like a tick or whatever. Whenever I'm writing on deadline, my friend Lindsay Jones, a sports writer in Denver, where she always does, she has a good impression of me on deadline. So I put both hands through my hair rapidly while typing. So I guess that was a superstition.
That you're on deadline. I love that. This came up at the bookstore too, and I think Linda was saying a couple different people were sharing, like, you know, if we're doing well, like I can't move from where I am. Like I have to stay in that spot. I don't have any. I felt like made me feel like I need to come up with something that, like, I guess like if I start watching they start doing poorly, I turn it off. Like if I miss starting it, tune in because it's going well. I feel the need to turn it off if it starts to go wrong. Like, I'm sorry, I brought bad juju. I will exit. I will remove myself from the situation.
Well, I'll tell you real quick. One of my favorite stories from the book is about a superstition. Adam Wainwright and Kyle McClellan. If you recall the magical fruit snacks. Wainwright, one of the great Cardinals of all time, the ageless Cardinal, was injured that year and didn't play, and McClellan missed out on some of the postseason too because of an injury. They were in Philadelphia, and the Cards were losing, and Wainwright said, "We need some runs. Let's have some fruit snacks." And he tosses them a bag there in the clubhouse, and they eat the fruit snacks, and of course, like, as the fruit snack's going in the mouth, the guy hits a home run, right? It's something along those lines, and they're like, "I guess we got to keep eating these fruit snacks." And they kept doing it, and as Kyle McClellan says in the book, he had thousands and thousands of calories of fruit snacks during October of 11, but it was worth it. The superstition paid off, and the Cardinals won the World Series.
Well, and just like our, I guess similar to our Play Gloria that came up, right? Like we got to keep that going.
Yes.
Okay. But I love superstitions that like as a city we can all get into. Like it doesn't have to just be like that, you know, there's like our individual ones, but then the ones that like the whole city can tap into of like, all right, let's go. This is the song we're playing. Like, cool. So this is not your first book that you've written. And so we might presume that you have more potentially coming. Have you thought about writing? Like, you've done a lot of nonfiction. Have you ever thought about doing fiction? Anything else? Otherwise, something we can look forward to?
That's a good question. And it's funny bringing it up because it's not complete. So like, who knows if it'll ever be complete, but I would love to complete a young adult novel about sports someday. And I've worked on it a little bit in my spare time, and that would be an amazing dream/goal if I could ever pull that off. But and I don't know, like I guess the bucket list book was always about the 2011 World Series, and now we got it. Now I've written it, so I don't know.
Congrats on completing a bucket list item. That's so huge. But I will say, I think there is a huge market for your fiction book. We have lots of, behind the scenes of the book selling world, there's definitely like a huge desire for books that like can fit a lot of different tastes, but also like YA is just, there's a lot of fantasy YA and a lot of like romance YA. And we're always like, where's the other stuff? Like that would be definitely an audience for that.
Yeah, that would be like I said, a dream/goal. Some days it's just a dream. Other days it's an actual goal, and I'm working on it. So,
have you tasted Matt Carpenter's special salsa?
Matt Carpenter's special salsa. I have not tasted it. It helped out in that one particular year, 2018. I mean, he was really, really good. But no, I've not. However, I did purchase his cereal. Carpenter's Crunch, I believe it was called, and I had the box on a shelf. It's now downstairs in the basement. Carpenter's Crunch. Shout out to Schnooks.
Well, and I think a great time to mention that Chris Carpenter wrote a foreword for the book.
Yes, and that's the big debate. Is who's the greatest Carpenter of all time in Cardinals history? Because Matt had multiple All-Star years, and you got Chris Carpenter here who wrote the foreword for the book. There's his bobblehead. But I feel like unfairly, I feel bad for a third Carpenter. It's not a religion joke. My mom's probably watching like, don't do it. That's not funny. But no, the Carpenter I'm going to refer to is another Cardinal named Chris Carpenter, but he was C-R-I-S, not no H in there, and he was actually not bad. So I feel bad for him that he'll. Like, can you imagine, like, you finish your career and you're like, yeah, I was just okay, but I'll tell you what, I'll be the best person with my name ever on the Cardinals, at least, right? Well, there'll never be another Chris Carpenter like me. And then World Series hero Chris Carpenter comes flying onto first base and winning Game 7 and writing the foreword to Hochman's book. And now the other guy. So sorry, other Chris Carpenter.
I often think about that with like how hard it is to enter professional sports in general, but then like how it must just be so hard to appreciate being in that if you're not like the best, or if it's like you made the team but you're not, like gosh, yeah.
Totally.
Poor Chris with a K. Well, he got a shout out tonight, so there you go.
Yeah. If you're watching.
Yeah, if he's watching, shout out. And there's also closing remarks to forget to mention Jason. Closing remarks by Jason Mott, right?
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. I got the book here. It's kind of cool how it worked out. Jason Mott, I've gotten to know him a little bit with his charity. Ben Fredrickson, a fellow columnist at the Post-Dispatch, Ben and I, same first name, we both co-hosted some of their charity events over the years, the Jason Mott Foundation. It was really cool. So when I was writing this book, I was like, who should I get to write the foreword? They said, try to get a former ball player. I'm like, Mott would be great. He's the closer for Game 7, great personality. And I reached out to him. He's like, yeah, it'd be awesome. Let's do it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, just write something up and we'll do it. He's like, yeah, I'll get to you. And he never like, I don't know why what that voice is, by the way. yeah, I'm Jason Mott, former Cardinal. That's apparently how I sound.
You're going to get yelled at like Yadi yelled at you.
Right. Jason Mott, he didn't say, yes, I'll do it for sure. He's like, let me see. And we talked about the deadline for the name of the book, the title of the book. I had another deadline for the foreword of the book. And like the day before, I hadn't heard back from Mott. I reached out to him again, sent him a message on MySpace. He didn't respond. Then I called his cell phone so I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I need to get somebody. Well, how about a foreword starting the book? Why don't I get the starting pitcher, Chris Carpenter? Spoke to him on the phone, and he was gracious enough to provide a foreword for the book. And like an hour later, Jason Mott's like, yeah, I'm down for that foreword thing. Let's do it. And I'm like, oh my God. But then we're like, oh, this is perfect because Mott was the closer of the team. So I'll have him close the book with his remarks, and it worked out just fine.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm really impressed with the design and outline and like, what is it? The symmetry of the book, the 11 chapters, 11 stories. We got a foreword, we got a starter, we got a closer. I mean, just like, well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. And so I want to do some just like rapid fire St. Louis love questions. So
okay.
A couple of things. Favorite burger place in St. Louis? You mentioned cheeseburgers earlier.
Yeah, and this camera is perfectly cutting off my belly here, by the way. He looks so thin on camera, yeah, because you can't see. I guess it's a tie between Max Local Eats and Carl's Drive-In.
Which gets a shout out in the book, right? Carl's Drive-In?
Yes. Jason Mott, the aforementioned, he goes to Carl's Drive-In in Brentwood on Manchester before Game 6 and orders a specific cheeseburger meal. And the woman behind the counter says, when you guys win tonight, you'll thus come back tomorrow before the next game. Sure enough, they won the game, and he came back the next day, had the same meal, and then he got the final out to win the World Series.
I mean, ugh. Okay. Also, I agree. Max is, as someone who lives on this side of town, Max is too close, really, in some occasions. Too accessible.
Yeah.
Favorite donut place?
Another great question. I'm going to go with Strange Donuts.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That feels fair. And then we have a couple this or that's. So, toasted Rabs or Emos?
Oh my God. If you almost witnessed on live Zoom someone's head exploding.
Really like came here for the hard-hitting questions, right?
Yeah. I mean, I while toasted ravioli is our thing, an Emo's pizza is what I would choose of those two now that I've thought through it a little bit.
Okay. That's fair. Bud Light or regular Bud?
Another great question. Bud Light, however, when you're at the ballpark, there's something about the taste of the king.
The pure Bud, the OG. Yeah. speaking of the ballpark, do you do hot dog or nachos? Or neither? You're welcome to substitute a third.
Thank you for not saying both.
Or you can also choose both.
A hot dog. I mean, I respect nachos. Don't get me wrong, but it's about hot dog. I will say this though: how, and maybe it's happened and I haven't heard of it. How is there not one place in town that sells Nolan era nachos?
I do not know.
Make it happen, restaurants of St. Louis.
Missed opportunity if I ever saw one. Okay, and finally, obviously, these all ended up being food themed. I feel like you can tell I was hungry for dinner when I wrote these. Ted Drew's or gooey butter?
Oh my gosh. I'm going with gooey butter cake. It's my favorite flavor in life. So yeah, gooey butter. It's not a knock. Of course, I hope none of these. I'm not knocking toasted ravioli, but not choosing. I'm not knocking Ted Drew's. I'm just choosing. Yeah.
Right. We're just saying, like, if you're choosing a meal right now, maybe this is what would be in front of you. But I mean, we can never like hate any of these St. Louis classics. I'm
getting a call from Ted Drew right now.
Ted is mad.
He's mad.
Ted is not pleased with us. Well, congratulations again. Happy book birthday. Way to check something off of your bucket list. Thank you so much for joining us for an awesome conversation tonight. This was so fun, and I can tell, I hope you get a chance to go back and look at the chat. There's been lots of love and questions and enjoyment there. So just a final reminder to everybody that you can get 11/11. And while Mother's Day might be on the brain, and certainly this might be a great Mother's Day gift for those who love the Cardinals, let's also not forget that Father's Day comes up a month later. So start thinking of gifts now. We have got signed copies in the store, not even signed book plates, like actual signed copies. So thank you for doing that. And thank you again so much for being here tonight.
Yeah, I love the Novel Neighbor. I had a blast in there today, signing the books and just checking it all out. What a great store. So hopefully those watching can order the book off Novel Neighbor's website or check it out in person.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching and for joining. And they can watch you tomorrow at 10 a.m., right?
Yeah, 10 a.m., stltoday.com.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everybody.